welcome back, everyone, to the still untitled podcast between Catherine Baab-Muguira and Amran Gowani. I am Amran Gowani. I am an aspiring novelist seeking traditional publication and a depressed house dad. And Kat, who are you?
I am a freelance writer and journalist, and I had a book come out in 2021. And I am also a mom, but I work.
Yes, you are the pinnacle of the modern.
That was not a dig, by the way. Oh God, I hope it
Yeah.
didn't sound like that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Okay.
We're having a good. It's all good times here. It's all good charm. So today, what we're going to do today, and you're going to see me tilting on my camera because technology is impossible. So I have my microphone works now, and my camera will not work. So as I kind of tilt, and you get seasickness watching me, just know we're doing the best that we can here. And so today we want to talk about query letters, which we know is a topic of a lot of agita for anyone seeking traditional publication through a major publishing house. And so there's a reason we're going to talk about that. So Kat, I'll turn it over to you so you can talk about today's episode and why we're touching on this.
Sure. I think first up, we should define our terms. Querying is the process of seeking a literary agent, and a query letter is the email that you send to agents seeking representation. And there's a traditional form for these query letters that everyone has seen everywhere. It's generally starts with a little pitch about your book and then a little blurb about you. At least that's the way it's mostly done. Does that set us up?
Yeah. And I think what's really important to stress here is for anyone that's not familiar with query letters or that has queried before is there really is a formula. You go to all these blogs and you go to these kind of like, hey, here's how you write a query letter. And it really is extremely formulaic. And you actually wrote a post, I believe, for Jane Friedman's website a while back, this year, I believe, that was like, if everyone's doing the same thing, then how do you differentiate yourself, right? And one of the keys
Exactly.
the key to every marketing problem is differentiation. That's my bit that I learned in MBA. It's like you can, there's all there's the four, P's of marketing and the three C's, and there's this and that, and there's all this terminology and lingo and jargon. And bottom line is, like, if you're not differentiated, then you're not really competing in the marketplace. And so I think that's really key as to how we're going to talk about query letters today.
It's so true. And it's funny, I had that piece come out and then people were sort of not attacking me in the comments, but saying, oh, agents saying, oh, this would never work on me, except you and I, and that's not to put anyone down, but you and I both got our agents, or at least are in the process of getting agents by doing something pretty different. When I got an agent for my project back in 2019, it was by querying with a paragraph that began that was about myself. And I don't know, do you want to walk us through it, Amran, like what you just did with yours, since you have had this amazing result?
Yeah. And so let's not beat around the bush anymore. I mean, I'm trying not to put myself over. My ego is definitely healthy enough as is, but Kat had helped me write a query letter, which I've been sending out starting in around late September. And just this last week, like, the world went mad and I started to get like full requests, like multiple full requests in a day. And I got an offer of representation last Monday. So we're recording today, November 12th. It's a Sunday. And I got an offer of representation on Monday, November 7th, from a query letter I sent on the previous Friday, or Monday, November 6th, from a query letter I sent on whatever the Friday was. And so it's just been wild. And I really want to give a ton of credit to Kat because she helped me write this query letter, and using kind of her differentiation formula, which is leading with who I am and like what I'm about and why I'm more, not so much what my book is about, but why I'm the right guy to be writing it. And so, so it's been a really exciting week for me. I haven't selected an agent yet because I am being spoiled for choice here. I have 2 offers and potentially more coming. So right now I'm in the due diligence phase, just making sure that whoever I do settle on is the right person for this project and the right person to represent me. And I got to tell you, I think we're going to say this for a future episode, but in the diligence process of reviewing these agents, I have learned quite a bit, which has so far steered me in one clear direction. And that's something that I think a lot of authors probably don't realize they should be doing. And so we're going to talk about that in a future episode. For today, we're going to talk about the query letter that has kind of helped me break through. And And so I just want to say thanks in advance for Kat. So in our show notes, because we're nice and fancy, even though I'm crooked already on your camera again, in our show notes, we're going to link to Kat's article from Jane Friedman. And I have my query letter on my Substack, but it's behind my paywall, and that's there's a lot of reasons I did that. And so we'll talk about what's in the query letter here, so you'll be able to hear it. And if anybody really wants the text, we could just leave a comment and I can hook you up with the text. So with that, I think we should just dive right into the letter. What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So again, I had a very formulaic query letter, like we talked about, which was like, start with the pitch and then get into, or start with hey, I found this on your manuscript wish list, blah, blah, blah. This is why I think we would be so great together. And then you go into the pitch and then you give a really brief bio that says nothing about yourself. And so what you're about to hear is how Kat wrote her query letter and how she advised me to write mine, which more or less completely subverts this formula. So I'm going to read now, so I'll be looking away from the camera. Dear agent name, my name is Amran Gowani, and I'm a former Wall Street analyst who's covered all manner of white-collar chicanery. I've watched a speculative M&A bubble inflate and inevitably burst, witnessed CFOs commit accounting fraud, and seen short sellers manipulate stock prices. I even hosted an investor roadshow for a pair of pharmaceutical executives turned convicted felons. So let's stop right there, Kat, and tell me why this works. Tell the listeners or the viewers why this works.
Already, you are standing out because I know something interesting about you from the word go. It's kind of like we were talking about in episode 1, where you have to be more than just the words on the page, right? We have to have some kind of element of personal branding. Plus, you have all this street cred. You're writing, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying you're writing a novel that's about Wall Street. And so you're introducing yourself with your credibility on this topic. And you've got this nice punchiness in the delivery. Kind of exciting to hear that you witnessed this corporate chicanery, like you're saying. So already I'm drawn in. You seem like a person who I should listen to. And I think that's the biggest thing to accomplish in your first paragraph is just, here's who I am and why you should listen to me. Otherwise, I mean, imagine how good your story pitch would have to be to stand out in a sea of a million similar paragraphs. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I think there's this really interesting concept that I am no expert on, but it fascinates me. It's called authorial authority. And I think it's really interesting in its own right. The words are similar, right? Author and authority. And so when an author has authority, it means that they're qualified to talk about what they're talking about. And so what I've done in this paragraph is really just establish, like you said, here's the voice you should be listening to. Now, I could be full of it, right? But I mean, at least I'm setting it up that you should be paying attention to me. You should be listening to what I have to say because it's going to be interesting.
And you've set up too, I mean, without saying so, without coming out and saying it, that you are smart and accomplished and you have already had like a professional career in something, which I think professionals want to work with other professionals. The fact that you've accomplished so much in another field, I do think translates to other fields. It means you know a little bit about, well, more than a little bit about how the world works, how to deal with people, how to get along, all of those things.
Yeah, totally. And I think one other thing that really excites me about this query letter design is that for the agent reading, like you pretty much know whether you're in or out, like in the first paragraph. Like if you read that paragraph and you hate it, then you're going to move on. And that's actually okay. Like I said, we're going to talk about this aspect of the agent query process in another episode, but it's better to like let the agent just be like, I'm not interested in this guy. Like, I don't care about this guy's a former Wall Street analyst. He's obviously a scumbag and, capitalism sucks and I'm moving on. Hey, that's fine. That means you're definitely not going to like what I'm about to write about. So, and it's also written in the kind of voice with which I write. So anybody that's reviewed my Substack would get a real feel for kind of like the writing voice that I bring to the table. Well, that writing voice is on display in the first paragraph. So you're either going to like it or you're not going to like it. And you're going to be able to decide really quickly without having to waste too much time. So
I agree. You strike this wonderful wry tone right away. So anyway, go on.
That's definitely me, sardonic and sarcastic all the way to the end. So, okay, second paragraph. I've drawn upon those experiences and the increasingly surreal headlines in the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times to craft my darkly hilarious Wall Street thriller, Leverage, 72,500 words. I'm confident this project will appeal to fans of Michael Lewis and Oliver Bulla, viewers of Billions and Secession, and readers of Matteo Escaripor's Black Buck, Raven Leilani's Luster, Elaine Say Chow's Disorientation, and Lee Stein's Self-Care. All right, Kat, what's working here? What gets you excited?
you've just placed it in a category. All of a sudden, I have a sense of where this is going in the bookstore, of what kind of category it would be in on Amazon. And you've also established, crucially, I think, that there is a large, hungry audience for exactly this kind of content, right? Maybe content's not a word we like, but you comped it to not only these very trendy books that all have, to my impression anyway, sold pretty well, but you're talking about mega hit TV series. I mean, we don't really live in a monoculture anymore, but I think almost everybody watching this will have heard at least of Succession and Billions.
For sure, for sure. And some inside baseball for everyone here. So when I first wrote my original query letter, I had fallen victim to this advice that you shouldn't comp yourself to a bestseller because it's egomaniacal, or like it shows the delusion about what your project's really about. And so I had some, modest comps. And Kat actually was the one I remember this vividly in an email exchange when you were helping me rewrite this thing. You said you need to get more aggressive in your query letter. And so I took that as permission, because, if Kat's seeing like what I'm doing here and she's saying like, you got to go for it, I'm like, okay, well, she's a published author, right? She's got a book published and she has this super amazing query letter that I think you went with a 50% conversion rate, like 4 offers on 8 agents or something, right? And so,
yes,
so here's the trick to this. So when Kat gave me permission, which, I didn't need it, but it was good to get it. And when Kat gave me permission, it'd be like, yeah, just link it to Michael Lewis. So, and for anybody that doesn't know, Michael Lewis is the famous nonfiction writer who wrote Liar's Poker. He used to work on Wall Street, Liar's Poker back in, I think it was in the 80s. And that really put him on the map. And then he's most famously known for The Big Short. Oliver Bulla is a former Financial Times analyst who writes about, the just perils of extreme financial deregulation. And he has this very famous book called Moneyland. So these are both nonfiction authors. Then, for the TV viewer, most people will know, like you said, Billions and Succession. And then I go to Matteo Escaricor's Black Buck, which is just a hilarious, funny novel. You should definitely pick it up. It's in paperback now. It came out in 2021. And then Raven Leilani's Luster, which is, I think it was a National Book Award finalist, if not winner, in 2020. And then Elaine Seychelles' Disorientation is a satire of academia. And Lee Stein's Self-Care is a satire of the wellness industry and the kind of the Silicon Valley culture. And so right off the bat, like you said, the trick here with this paragraph is that it shows that there's, like you already mentioned, there's wide appeal. This project has potential appeal to a number of audiences. And, like we said, the answer to every marketing question is differentiation. But then the strategy for most marketing problems is segmentation. Like you have to really find who your audience is and like who you actually think will read. Well, the beauty of the type of project that I've constructed here is that a lot of people are interested in Wall Street and corporate corruption across different medias, across different genres. So I don't know if you have something to add to that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that Wall Street and corporate life is an extremely mainstream topic. I mean, it doesn't hurt that the entire country just watched this trial of the FTX founder, that Michael Lewis's new book has been in the news. All of the things that you're drawing on here are, I would think, would be already top of mind for any agent who is going to be interested in your project. So it immediately establishes like, here's a hot project with a wide audience that is going to be comped to some pretty fancy titles. And you know what you said about the aggressive thing, like not only do I really believe in you and I really think this is going to happen, and I have pretty much the entire time we've known each other, this is the moment to do that. When you're selling a second book, it's a lot harder to make big claims because you have a sales track record of some kind. Now is the time to push in and say, this is going to be big, and not be shy about that.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it's actually, I didn't even think about that. So, we're learning together here, because like, now that you say that, it's like, it's pretty clear, right? If you, and by just to be clear, I have no offers for books yet, but like, let's just say, if you're an author and you're going out for your first book, you get a $20,000 advance, you're now going to be anchored to $20,000 advance in whatever sales come down the line. If you get a $100,000 advance, you're going to be anchored to $100,000 advance in whatever sales come down the line. And so I think you're exactly right. Like if you want to anchor yourself to essentially big sales potential, hopefully get that, right? And then hopefully deliver that. And then every subsequent project that comes down the line, will probably perform in a similar light.
It's true. And I mean, I think a thing that a lot of beginners or novices in this space wouldn't necessarily know is that the amount of your advance pretty directly corresponds to the energy that the publisher is likely to put behind the project. It corresponds to the marketing budget you're about to get, I would assume. It corresponds to the number of people who are going to be working on your book, like internally in the house. It signals all sorts of excitement, and that absolutely carries through to how much effort the publisher puts into selling it. So this is the moment too to push for the biggest possible advance, because that's also the biggest possible marketing push you're likely to get.
Yeah, and that is something that if you're watching this video or you're listening to us on the podcast, like rewind what Kat just said and listen to it about 5 times, because that is extremely important. Again, Kat and I both have business backgrounds. Like when you're in a big corporation, which, you know, big publishing houses are, they're just essentially big, you know, big business. And there's going to be all sorts of, you know, competition for resources and bureaucracies and infighting and just people stuff. Right. And so if the editor who acquires, you know, of your book, and hopefully my book will get acquired, is obviously, but if just broadly speaking, the editor who acquires your book is paying a big advance and saying, this is the project that's going to move the needle for us as an entire corporation, like you can bet your bottom dollar, like you're going to get a lot of attention inside.
Yeah, it's nail the buzz now, because it's a lot harder to catch that wind at any other stage. And also, I mean, so much can happen between the time your book is acquired and the time it comes out. It's probably going to be at least 1 year, more like 2. And in that time, we all know what kind of industry publishing is and what kind of state it's in now. It's possible that the editor who acquired you will have left. It's possible she or she will be out on maternity or paternity leave, whatever. So you want to nail the biggest possible enthusiasm right at the beginning, because it's your one shot. It's not the time to look away from that ball.
That's just really great insight. Again, rewind and listen again to Kat. Kat knows all. Okay, so now we're moving to the third paragraph. Now, this is where like this is a little lesson in tension for everyone. So the third paragraph, I have still not talked about the book. All right, get ready. Here we go. What's more, with old school bank runs, newfangled crypto scams, and AI-induced hype buffeting the economy, our next financial crisis is always percolating, and now could be the perfect moment to shop a Wall Street-themed novel with a ripped-from-the-headlines feel. Market crashes and brazen corporate skullduggery often produce a spate of popular films and books. Think The Big Short, and leverage could fit neatly into that tradition. Okay, Kat, so I'll jump in first and say, I remember vividly you said, this is a paragraph that I would not have thought to write, that you kind of just, you gave me basically an intro sentence where you said, the perfect moment to shop a Wall Street themed novel. That was kind of like the little breadcrumb that you laid for me. And then I just took it and I produced that paragraph. And so kind of tell me why that line is so important in this query letter.
Well, for one, I think one of the biggest questions that any project needs to address out of the gate, and it's not the agent's job to think of this, and it's not the editor's job to think of this. I would argue that it is the author's. Why now? Like, why should an agent respond to this in a prompt way? Why should an editor look at this right away rather than waiting? Because if someone starts to wait, starts to sleep on your project, like, it's lost, right? You're lost in the mix. You need to get that sort of, in marketing, you talk about a call to action. And always when you do that, it's like, usually like a click here. But when I'm writing marketing materials, I'm like, click here now, click here today, sign up now. You get that little bit of urgency in there, because you need someone to act right away, to not get distracted, to not wander away. So I think that's most of what that paragraph is doing. And you're tying it to these news events in a really smart way that makes it easier too for the agent. Like when they call up editors and say, what they're going to send over in a few minutes, you've already done that thinking for them. There's that famous business book that says, don't make me think. And you don't need to read the entire book to get the point of that. It's just do the thinking for the agent, or at least help them. They're going to have some insight too. But honestly, you're probably the one with more Wall Street knowledge, more financial news knowledge in this case, if I had to guess. So I say, like, tell them why this is an urgent project, why it fits into the news cycle right now, because everybody likes that and it gets people to act right now.
Right. And I'll give you guys a little inside scoop on how I thought about this paragraph. So my original drafting, which I did query this original draft, I said, our next financial crisis is already percolating. I eventually tweaked that to our next financial crisis is always percolating. And it's a little subtle tweak, but that already and always means that a book about Wall Street crashes is pretty much perennially topical. And then by linking to like the bank runs that happened, like with Silicon Valley Bank back in March of this year, and then the crypto nonsense, and obviously the crypto meltdown and the NFT meltdown. And then now like the newest hype that's kind of like pushed the stock market back up is artificial intelligence, whatever that means, right? It's just all hype. So it's like there's always going to be something that's pushing the marketplace up and down and like in buffeting it. And so by just kind of saying that, by just acknowledging that, like I'm giving myself permission to say like this book is going to be topical today, it's going to be topical tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like you get the newsiness in there, but there's an evergreenness that you're putting across too. It's very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now, because hopefully in a not too distant future, my book will be available for sale somewhere. So I'm going to skip the plot summary section, so as not to spoil, because in the query letter, when you do your plot summary, I think you should probably, and Kat, I want you to weigh on this, but the author should probably bring the plot, I'd say 2/3 of the way to conclusion, if not all the way, and spoil the entire book. It really depends on your book, but you need to give the agent something more than just the setup, because there's a lot of books have a good setup and then you don't know how it's going to end. So you have to, in my book, there's a lot of twists and turns, there's a lot of thrills, there's excitement, there's backstabbing, there's, all sorts of great stuff in there. And I basically had to make the decision that in order to get the agent interested, I have to reveal, I'd say 2/3 of that and then save the end to get their appetite whet. So Kat, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I remember real particularly how we were going back and forth on the paragraphs of plot summary and so on. And I remember saying to you, what I want is a clear sense of rising action. Mm-hmm. So a sense that there are stakes and that the stakes keep getting raised and raised and raised, because that's one of the reasons people read fiction. It's one of the things that makes for a suspenseful, engaging story. And you absolutely have that in your book. So to draw out those events and get them to pile up in a really specific way to kind of like make people like catch their breath a little bit, pay closer attention, like every single sentence. That I think is one reason why your query letter is so amazing, because you really get a sense of the momentum of the plot in there, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I give Kat a lot of credit for helping me kind of like when she gave me we were kind of going back and forth, and like she said, she was helping me kind of think about how to make that action escalate. And I had most of it, but it didn't rise. It kind of felt a little flat in my original draft. And a Kat really helped me kind of like make the intensity of the action, keep amplifying. And so just again, I don't want to spoil the book for potential future readers, hopefully, but basically there's a paragraph that says, and by the way, I did a little transition sentence on Kat's recommendation, which just says a quick plot summary, : so that now that there's a nice clean break from those first 3 intro paragraphs where I talk about who I am and why this book is going to be exciting for the marketplace. Then there's a nice clean break. And basically I introduce the protagonist. I say what, kind of like the inciting incident. And then we go through the first twist, and then we go through the second twist, and then we go through the final setup. So it's giving away, a significant part of the book, but that helps the agent understand that, well, this is going to be a fun ride. Okay. Then the final 2 paragraphs. So after the plot summary, I say, this is where I get to my more personalized bio. I say, when I'm not working on a novel or chasing my 2 young children around our Chicago home as a stay-at-home dad, I write Field Research, a popular humor newsletter which raises money for charitable organizations such as Sandy Hook Promise and Moms Demand Action. My story, Unruly Preschooler, won 3rd prize in the 2021 Chicago Writers Association Flash Fiction Contest and was collected in Volume 4 of the Write City Review. Finally, 3 beta readers have provided blurbs for Leverage, which I've pasted below. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to your response. Best, Amran. Okay, so let's talk about these last 2 paragraphs, Kat. Why is this a nice close to the letter?
Hey, it gives me a sense of who you are. It brings a warmth. It gives me a sense of what your daily life is like. It's just generally appealing. You feel like somebody I can be friends with, like as someone who lives in my neighborhood, someone I know, someone who I run into at school drop off. So it's humanizing, I think, is the word I'm looking for. And it also says that you're being proactive about building your audience by mentioning your Substack, which is popular and very funny. Puts it across that you're already doing the work and that you understand that you have to do that, because for better or for worse, a lot of authors come at this and they don't necessarily want to do the publicity pieces. They don't want to do the marketing pieces. They don't want to have to build their own audience, which I get. None of us want to do that, but it is so necessary. And I genuinely think, it's my hunch anyway, that agents are looking for it. Like agents are wanting you to be proactive.
For sure, for sure. So this past week alone, I had two conversations with agents that both offered me representation, and both agents said that they went to my Substack and they looked at it and they read it and they thought it was funny, and they saw, okay, this guy is. It also speaks to the kind of a prolific nature of the output, right? So like this guy wrote this book, he wrote this query letter, but he also wrote over 120 pieces on his Substack over the last 2 years, right? And so
Hmm.
that shows that like this guy can work, right? Because an agent is looking for someone not just for a one book. They're looking for someone who can they can build a career alongside of, right? Because remember, just to remind everyone, the agent takes 15% of the gross earnings of the author. So if the author doesn't make any money, the agent doesn't make any money. So what do you think about that, Kat?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I've told you this before too, because I was at one point I was trying to convince you to do a nonfiction project together. And one of the things I had noticed about you and admired and respected was like you produce. A lot of people are kind of wait around waiting to get an assignment or so, and you're being super proactive about it. I mean, help, that's just a lot of words. I don't know how many thousands of words that is, but it shows that you're motivated and honestly that you're a pro or so near it that you can be one. You know what I mean?
For sure, for sure. And it was really gratifying to hear from the agents that like building that Substack, even though I don't have a massive following, but I'm over 800 subscribers now, which is pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with. But they said, you're building an audience now of people that will be interested in buying your book. And that's a real advantage, even if it's still kind of small, but it's growing. And it's showing that you're willing to do the work. It's showing that you have the effort level. The other thing I really like about this kind of almost abrupt transition into my personal bio is at the top of the letter, you could easily read it and be like, well, this guy is a Wall Street scumbag who just thinks that he's the hottest thing on the God's green earth, right? And then you get to the bottom and it's like, oh wait, this dude is a stay-at-home dad, and he is just grinding and hustling, and he's making this writing thing work for himself. And so I really think that's an important um, juxtaposition to draw from top to bottom, which is like it's almost like this previous life is where this novel comes from, and then this new life is what I am as a dad and an author. And then I think for the really astute agent who's reading that is going to say, well, this guy doesn't have any sacred cows to protect. Like, oh, he's going to go in on Wall Street
Mm-hmm.
in his book. Like he's not going to defend it. He's not going to be. He's on the side of justice here, if you will. And so I think that's a really powerful closing.
I agree with you. And I think it's sympathetic. I feel like you're someone I could connect with from that. Even the charities that you mentioned, those shouldn't be political causes, and yet they are.
Mm-hmm,
Those are
mm-hmm.
political topics, and so on. So I already know that we're going to get along, and that I think is helping you screen for somebody who's going to like what you're doing.
Right, right, right. I mean, again, we don't want to politicize everything, but the reality
No.
is, publishing is a fairly liberal industry or extremely liberal industry, depending on who you ask. And, so if you're kind of speaking a language that they understand, like that's only going to help you. It doesn't mean you can't, write a book as a conservative thinker or whatever. We're not saying that, but just, every little advantage you can put in your query letter is going to help you. So the last thing is just the blurbs. Now, again, these blurbs are awesome. I am so happy. My buddy Dinar Dale, who's one of the funniest writers working, it's an amazing book. His second book's coming out next year. Wrote me a blurb that I literally want read at my eulogy. It makes me so happy. But I'm not going to read them because again, I don't need to put myself over any more than I already have during this conversation. But I want to talk about why they're important. So the first blurb is from a young author named Andrew Barriga, and he actually has a hot book coming out that's going to be published in early 2024 called Victim. And if you look at Publishers Marketplace, you'll see that he got himself a nice deal. He's got a good agent. He teaches writing down at the University of Miami. Second blurb is from Kat. So thank you very much, Kat. And she obviously has I'll read your blurb since I'm talking to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
Kat's blurb says, quote, I love a good Wall Street thriller, but I especially love them with this kind of depth and nuance, a keen and brilliant sense of the absurdity of it all. Amran is a sharp and funny, often surprisingly moving writer. And that's by Catherine Baab-Muguira, author of Poe for Your Problems, Uncommon Advice from History's Least Likely Self-Help Guru, Hachette 2021. And so what I really like about that, and an agent actually mentioned this to me, that in the blurb that said I was a surprisingly moving writer. The agent said that my novel reflected that the novel starts off kind of rough and tumble and aggressive. It's in this Wall Street kind of in your face. The voice of the novel is definitely not going to be for everyone. It's got some really unhinged stuff. It's a really fun novel, but it's definitely not for everyone. And I think what one of the agents told me they really liked was that blurb clued them in that like this novel is not just going to be like the Wolf of Wall Street, right? Where it's just depravity upon depravity upon depravity. This book has heart. And the agent also said that one of my quotes mentions that one of my blurbs rather, my friend says that I have more heart and edge than most people. And the agent also said that there's a lot of heart in the book. And that was just really gratifying to hear. But that also comes from the blurb. Like these blurbs whet the appetite for the agent. And the last thing I'll say, and I'm going to turn it over to you to comment on the power of blurbs, is that many authors don't think to get a blurb for their book, especially when they're querying. Everyone thinks about blurbs as something that happens, after your book is sold, and it's going to be on the back jacket copy of the book. And I know, Kat, you're pretty much an expert in blurbs, so I'll stop talking. Just why don't you talk about the power of blurbs, but in particular the power of blurbs in a query letter?
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree that your blurbs are awesome. And I do love the one that I gave you because I think it's astute. Obviously, I would think that. But I think you're right about the role of blurbs, particularly in a query letter before an agent has seen anything of the novel itself. Like it's prepping someone. There's a term in psychology called emotional priming, where you set up a person to feel a certain way. So if someone tells you that the movie you're about to see is so moving, you're going to cry, it becomes more likely that that the viewer will be moved and cry. It's very well known. I'm not a psychologist myself, but it's something that I came across in graduate school, and ever since I've been thinking about emotional priming and the way we set up people to feel certain ways. Now, obviously, agents are intelligent people, and there's no crappy or crass manipulation here. All of these things are true things that people have said about you and your work. They're well informed by reading. I mean, I've read a ton of your stuff by now. I think I have a decent sense of how you are as a writer, and it's absolutely true. It's sharp, it's funny, and then there are these surprising moments that kind of turn things around and reveal a depth, a feeling that's moving. I think maybe I'm coming back to that word, but I do think it's true. I told you that I think the character's interactions with his mother are part of the heart of the novel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So beyond the
Yeah.
emotional priming thing with the blurbs, like I would just say that it also shows that you have people who are going to go to bat for you. You have people who are already vouching for you out of the gate. It shows you've got some connections. And I realize not everyone loves blurbs. A lot of people resent blurbs because of this. But yeah, it shows an industry knowledge. It's something that the agent can then share with editors that they send the project to, which then gets the editor excited, primes them for how to read the book. That's probably enough for now. Am I going in the direction you wanted?
No, this you can talk as long as you want, but this is really important stuff. And I guess I would just jump in and say, just to be clear to everyone, the blurb game is definitely there's some elements of kind of unsavoriness to it. Well, I can promise you, all three people that wrote the blurbs read the book, and all three people that wrote the blurbs love the book, and so, or at least found the book powerful. And so, I think what some authors I would imagine are listening to this and they're like, well, this guy just got worked on Wall Street and he's got these connections and he's just, it's easier for him to get blurbs than other people. Well, let me just disabuse everyone of that notion. So yeah, the guys who gave me the blurb, so Kat, who I'm talking to right now, we're making a show. I met Kat on Substack, just being a reply guy in her comment section, and then showing up to her posts, engaging with her, duped her into subscribing to my stuff. And then, a year later, she's beta reading my book and she's giving me an awesome blurb. My buddy Dinar Dale, and I'll link to all these people's Substacks in our comment section, or sorry, in our show notes. But my buddy Dinar Dale is a guy I just met on Substack. Absolutely amazing, talented guy. I love this guy so much. Probably my favorite writer going right now. I worked with this guy. He read the book. He loved it. Gives me an awesome blurb. I did not know him before I started writing. Andrew Barriga was an absolute home run beta read and blurb. Randomly, I had the Substack, right? Sometime maybe late spring, I get this, new free subscriber to Field Research. And that's always a little exciting moment. You're like, hey, somebody wants to check out my work. And I see it's this guy, Andrew Barriga, and he says, author of the upcoming novel, debut novel, Victim, is in his blurb. I'm like, oh, it's his interest guy. Everybody who subscribes to me that's a writer, I give him a chance, right? I go check out what they're doing. I start reading this guy's stuff. I'm like, whoa, this dude can write. He's got some really cool stuff. So I resubscribe back instantly. We start connecting just in his comment section. He kind of digs what I'm doing. I dig what he's doing. We start kind of becoming friends just, via these online comments. Actually, he ended up sending his agent a note on my behalf and said, hey, why don't you take a look at this guy's book? Now, and she did. So I queried his agent. She read my book. She liked it, but she actually ultimately passed in the project. But bottom line is, by getting that blurb from Andrew and from doing that networking and just being a guy who's excited about other people that are working, being a guy who's just excited about writers writing, that created an opportunity for me. In a lot of ways, like if Andrew's agent had come through and said, I want to offer a rep, I probably would have just stopped querying and been super excited. She's a really strong agent and she got him a good deal, and she's really a competent person. And then on the flip side, she read the book and she gave me some great feedback, but she ultimately passed. But that didn't dissuade me. That just gave me more confidence that I'm on the right track here to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, all that strikes me is dead on. I would say the same thing happened to me too. I've been a freelance journalist for 10-ish years. I wouldn't say I was always doing it well or making the most of my opportunities or anything, but when I sold my nonfiction book proposal in 2019, one of the things I did was I included blurbs between the title page and the table of contents, so you could not miss them. And the way I had blurbs from an old boss of mine, a historian named Alan Crawford, who's written a number of well-regarded biographies, books on Twain and Jefferson, and who's well-respected in the field. I had met Ryan Holiday, the author of these mega bestsellers on Stoicism, and the nicest person on the planet, just by emailing him, because he included his email address in the back of one of the books he wrote, which I love. So I emailed him about that. That's how I met him. And then the other one, Tim Kreider, who's my favorite living essayist, who's so funny and sharp and smart. I met him by being a reply guy on his Facebook page over a period of 3 or 4 years until he finally DM'd me and was like, "Who are you, crazy person who comments on every single thing I do?" So anyway, yeah, that's how it happened for me too. It was not the case that I went to the right MFA program, because I definitely did not. It wasn't the case that I, went to Harvard as an undergrad, because I didn't do that either. I've never had a fancy media job. It's just kind of hanging around on the internet, befriending people, and I think what you mentioned too is key. Like, it can't just be all about your own work. I know we're all obsessed with our own stuff. Of course we are. That's why we're here. But showing genuine interest in other people, like, it helps you make friends, for one. And then it also just, people want to hear about their own work too. They want to get the same thing out of it that you're getting. So anyway, that reciprocity, I think, is really key, and it has to be genuine and honest. Like, it's not, yours is certainly not based on smarm. Mine wasn't either. I think if you were trying to do it in a mercenary way, it would be a lot less successful, actually.
For sure. I mean, and like, I think my biggest strength as a writer, my biggest strength maybe as a human, is just, I can't lie. I can't fake it, man. I just, like I am myself. It's take it or leave it. And so when I'm interacting with those with you and Denard and Andrew and their comment section, I mean, it's all coming from a place of deep authenticity, really a place of immense respect. And if you don't feel that for someone, like, maybe you go to someone's Substack and you like their writing, but you don't really get a sense that they're the kind of person that you necessarily want to be friends with or build a relationship with, then don't. You don't have to, because then it's going to feel forced and it's going to come off as fake. But if you find your people, people will help you, man. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that you have helped me. Building the relationship with you is why we're doing this show. Denard and Andrew. Denard I've known for over a year now, and I just can't say enough positive things about the guy. And Andrew is a guy I'm getting really excited about knowing. I think both he and Denard are going big places. These are guys who should be following their work.
I think Andrew's book is going to be so big, and I've got a copy to read, before, like a proof copy, and I'm really, really excited about it.
Awesome.
And I think that, like, that's your lane too. Like, these guys, the satire, the sort of, I mean, there's a bit in your book about the experience of racism in corporate America and that sort of thing too. It's certainly, like, I think other writers are touching on that. That's another common sort of chord. It's not strictly the same thing either, but I sometimes have come across issues that felt like, I was kind of encountering them because it was a woman thing or something like that. We've talked about all of that. The final thing I would say about blurbs too, and maybe like mine for you and the ones that I had for mine, are sometimes it's good to get people of the opposite gender to vouch for you, just to round out the audience, to make you not seem necessarily like too male or necessarily too female to get a project across, because all agents, all editors are looking for projects with broad appeal. Does that make sense?
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I really thought hard about that too, because so Andrew is I believe he's Puerto Rican, and Andrew, sorry if I don't have that right. I'm pretty sure you're Puerto Rican. Denard is Jamaican American, and I am half Pakistani, half Caucasian. So we are all like, men of color, heterosexual, heteronormative guys, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you should be yourself. But like you said, if it was only that, then that could be like okay, well, this is only. It's almost like you're narrowing your audience, right? And frankly, like men don't read as much as women, and so if you can't get a woman to vouch for your book, you could be kind of closing off your audience. Like this is like some really macho Wall Street gross stuff. Like that's actually going to be not as appealing. And so yeah, it was really important for me to have at least one blurb from a woman, and I was thrilled to have one from you. And I would say just for my beta readers, I used 3 blurbs that I thought were relevant beta readers, but I had 8 beta readers, 5 men, 3 women, and people Hispanic, Black, white, and Chinese, all different types of races and ethnicities, cultures, genders, read my book, and I was 8 for 8. Like everyone loves it. So that's how I knew I was onto something, but that's how I knew that the book had mass appeal. But I was also very confident that when I went out with my book that, I don't have like some massive blind spot in it. Right. And that's reflected in the beta readers. That's also reflected in the blurbs.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important to get some of that well-roundedness in before you start showing it to agents and editors, because they absolutely have those concerns too, if they're right to.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I feel like that's
agents
almost like a step. Go on.
Oh, sorry to cut you off there. The agents, I mean, we're doing business here, right? I mean, there's the art side and there's the business side, and the agent is doing the business side. They will help you with the art, but this is about making money objectively, right? That's how they make a living. And so if you have a commercial blind spot, then that's going to really hurt you.
I absolutely think that's true. And that's another, just like, it's a marker of professionalism. It's a note of credibility in the mix here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, so that's the letter. Like I said, I'm happy if anybody really wants the text, I can find a better way to get it to you. I think if I put it in the show notes, it's going to look really ugly. But obviously you could always just listen to our episode like 20 times, and then you could just transcribe it by hand. But it's we'll make it available if people really want it. And yeah, so this was just a really, like, I don't want to put myself over too much, but I went out with this query letter and I legitimately believe that I have the best query letter of any author querying in America right now. Like that's how confident I was, because of the way Kat helped me construct it, because I did the work to get the blurbs, because I did the work to get the beta readers, because I thought really hard about positioning this book as a business. Remember, the book ultimately is a product. We can be touchy-feely about, oh, it's art. And it's like, but yeah, but if it was just art, you just write it for yourself and you give it to your friends. You're trying to sell your book, right? That's why you're querying an agent. So you have to position it as a product to be sold in the marketplace, and a product that contains intrinsic artistic value. And I think that this query letter really gets to all that stuff. And that's why I was just really confident with it and just really thrilled with the results from the querying process so far.
As well, you should be. I mean, I'm biased. I'm your buddy, but I think it is the best novel query letter I have ever seen.
Well, I will take it. And then just to keep myself a little humble, because I know I have a tendency to be a little extra sometimes, this query letter also received same-day rejections, immediate form letters, no responses. Like this, it wasn't that just the query letter. The query letter could be as good as it could be, and the agent that I queried was not the right agent. And that's something we're going to talk about in the next part, maybe next episode in this series about querying while it's fresh in my mind, because I just went through it. Like, not every agent is for you. So your query letter can be awesome, your book can be awesome, and it's not the right agent. And so that's something we're going to expand upon in a future episode.
Yeah, that's an incredibly important piece of it too. So we should do a whole separate one.
We sure will. And so I think we'll stop there. We don't want these episodes to run too long. Hopefully this is super informative for everyone. It's super informative for me. I mean, I'm learning while talking. Kat's always got great insights to share. I've always got hot takes to give. And so between the two of us, you should always get something fun from these episodes. So thanks so much for tuning in. Again, in the show notes, we'll have all the information that we discussed throughout the episode. And this time we'll keep it a little snappier, but so Kat, one thing you're reading or watching, one thing to plug. Go.
Okay, I will fold those into one. The literary agent, Sarah Nicholas, has an amazing podcast called Queries, Qualms, and Perks. I've been on it. We can link to my episode. It's just successful authors who've gotten agents who are sharing their successful query letters with you. Amran, I think you should be on there one day. But anyway, the podcast is free. It's incredibly informative, and there is somebody who has done an interview who is working in your genre. So get on it, listen to it. It's one of the best writing podcasts out there, and it's amazing to me that it doesn't have more listeners.
All right. Well, there you go. I'll be checking that one out myself. So I will. I'm still reading Self Care from Lee Stein. Obviously, this last week was wild, so I didn't get as much reading as I wanted to. But I'm really loving it. I'm gonna be finished with that on my next episode. I promise you. One of the things I like about this is this is an accountability for me to read more books, because I can't come on here and be like, oh, I've been reading this book for 6 months. I will be too embarrassed. So shame is a good motivator. I will finish that book by next episode. And just to plug, I'll plug my Substack. I actually, and I'll link it in the show notes. Field Research. It's a lot of fun. I write some satire, some humor. This past Friday, I had a good idea in the works, and this whole query agent thing went mad, and I wrote about the query agent thing, and I celebrated with my readers. I had a lot of great comments, a lot of likes, whatever those are worth, and just a lot of engagement. So it was a lot of fun. So I'll link that. You guys can check it out. And yeah, so episode 2, we are wrapping up. Or I think I said a lot less. I think I said, a lot less. I think my eye contact was better. Unfortunately, I can't get my camera straight. So, just bear with us. But Kat, how do we do? Anything else to
I
close
did better.
with?
I was making such a conscious effort not to say nearly as much, and since I listened to our last one. So hopefully our track record is improving.
There you go. And just to prove that this podcast is worth your time, from episode 1 to episode 2, I became an in-demand author, sought out by agents all over the country. So there it is. This is clearly working. Correlation and causation. Who can tell the difference? It's working. We're going to be famous soon. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you guys next time with more on query letters. All right. Signing off. Kat, signing off.